Alrighty, today's June 16th. Quick update on the tomatoes that I'm growing this season. In front of us we have Melanie's Ballet. You can see the tomatoes are starting to form up. Pretty decent size. Lots of these plants are having near full form tomatoes on them. So this is definitely an earlier producer than some of the other ones that I'm growing this season. Although in my last video I did not have them staked, this one I've decided to. They start to lean, and you definitely need to prune them up on that bottom part of the plant because the suckers will make it split, and it's not a really great sturdy stem for an individual standing plant. Maybe if you just had one, but with how dense I'm planting these, I needed to stake them. And back here, this is the sneaky sauce. This one's a little bit of a later producer. It has tons and tons of flowers on it, but if I go in, you can see it's one of the very few tomatoes that is formed on these plants, and it's kind of small. Just consider how dense I'm planting these, and there's no signs of early blight. None. Here are the Stony Brook hearts. Now these are the ones that I commented last time and said how sturdy and stout these plants are. I've still not staked these, and I'm sure they're going to need staking, but just look at how thick those stems are. This one kind of leaned over a little bit, but then it pops right back up again. Now, none of these guys have really any fully formed fruit. They're just putting out flowers now. But these are going to be larger tomatoes. Definitely not quite as early. Here are my slicers this year. Now this is my favorite from last year. This is lemon ice. Although this has a few problems. One, it's not a very sturdy stem. Definitely needs staking very early in order to get a proper shape. If I zoom out here, you can see it's kind of gnarled and mangled compared to my other growers. Lots and lots of flower clusters, and the flavor on these, even though it's a yellow tomato, very rich. Very, very meaty. And I had a hard time getting seeds from this last year because I only had a few tomatoes from it, and there was only like 10 seeds in each tomato. So it's almost all flesh. I believe this one's called Ferticofi. Starts with a W, but I think it's pronounced with an F. I grew these as a later season one last year. I wasn't super impressed with the flavor, but I thought that might have had to do with the location, had less sun, and how late I started them. So I'm going to see if they taste any better this year, and if not, then I'm probably just going to get rid of them, even though they have a very interesting color. They're orange and yellow stripes. Very pretty looking tomato. And this is my best performer from last year. This is Tasmanian chocolate. Kind of squat shaped tomatoes on this one. Purpley. Very good flavor. A little bit watery, but the productivity on this, and this is not only fairly early for how large the tomatoes are, it also continues to go until the very end of the season. And it's very disease resistant. I've never seen this actually get disease, and I've been growing this whole block last year. I never saw any signs of it getting sick or getting any sort of blight. And it was fairly resistant to the cold too. Maybe it has something to do with it being from Tasmania. And this one over here is Loxton Lass. I think there's a couple of tomatoes Very small one starting on this one. This is an orange tomato. It's the first year growing this one, so I don't really have that much information on it. It seems like a strong grower so far. And the bloom clusters are pretty dense. I don't think all of them will take. For example, these ones down here, I don't think all of them pollinated. That's probably for the better, so that you get good size from them. Here's an update on my indeterminates this year. This is Dwarf Eagle Smiley, and very impressed with this one so far. Though, I must say, even though it's supposed to be a dwarf tomato plant, I'm going to zoom out here, it is not very dwarf. Next to it is Black Cherry. I also have Super Sweet 100 and Barry's Crazy Cherry, and it's about the same height. Very, very prolific. Already setting fruits. Even set fruits on the very bottom here that are just about to start coloring up. Overall, very impressed with this so far. Extremely vigorous. Lots and lots of flowers. And I was saying, the flowers on this one, even though the clusters are a little bit smaller, are comparable to the Barry's Crazy Cherry, even though this one has insane flower sets. I mean, look at that flower set. There's probably 150 flowers just in that one cluster. But Dwarf Eagle Smiley has so many clusters, and the fruits are just a little bit larger. I think it almost compares to the productivity of that. And if the flavor's better, it might be a pretty good contender for that yellow cherry tomato. Though Barry's Crazy Cherry, in my opinion, is very hard to beat. Right next to it is Black Cherry. It does have some fruits setting on there. Not nearly as early as Barry's Crazy or Dwarf Eagle Smiley. But they're still setting. Disease-free for the most part. And a little bit more vigorous than my other growers so far. This is Barry's Crazy Cherry. Obviously, insane fruit sets. This is a favorite from my last year's growing, and I think it's going to be a favorite this season too. Very split and crack resistant. I think it has something to do with the shape. Highly recommend if that's a problem for you. And of course, we have Super Sweet 100 all the way to the end here. It's just a classic red tomato. I've had problems with cracking and splitting before. I considered growing Sweet Million, but I just had the leftover seeds for this year, so I figured I'd give it another chance. And these are some of my peppers this year. In a cage I have the Zapotec, which were my favorite from last year. They're pretty small, but I actually think this is a decent size for them at this time of the year, June 16th. Because if you look at some of my other ones, they're kind of in rough shape. So next to them, these are 7 pots, and they had a bit of a rough start. Especially that one right there. That's a teeny tiny one. But eventually it'll grow up, get pretty bushy, and still pump out probably a couple hundred of those really spicy brown peppers. These are 7-pot chocolate. Next to them, these are lemon spice peppers. These are yellow jalapeno. I thought these made really great sauce. I made a hot sauce with lemon and these yellow jalapenos and a little bit of ginger. Very good combination. These are Sugar Rush. I used to grow the Sugar Rush Reds, but I found that the peach just have a better flavor overall, and I like them a lot more. So for red sauces, I just let my jalapenos get nice and ripe, and I process those to make a red sauce. There's an update on the pick and picks. I just decided to grow these this year instead of the golden marb scallop squash that I grew last year. The scallop squash had a good flavor, excellent productivity. They continue to pump out all the way through the season. But I thought the shape was kind of annoying. to process and cook with. It was pretty neat to put as a Halloween direction or just to put it on the kitchen table because of how weird they looked. But I feel like the crooknecks are going to be a little bit more practical to actually cook with. All in all, it's June 16th. This is the state of the raised bed garden. Zone 6B, 7A, Northern New Jersey, Passaic County.